Hey, sus. Hey, welcome in. Welcome in. It's good to see y'all. I know it's been a little minute. I've been checking out these other chats, and I'm like, oh, I see my supporters is getting tired of all the mess that's going around these past few days. I said, let me go on and try to make time and go live and see how everybody doing, see how everybody holding up. So, I've been working on this little story. I got a chance to get through part one. I just haven't got all the way through part two. And it's actually a part three, but we probably just get through the first part and then I'll probably come back because I'm off tomorrow. And I'll come back a little earlier with part two. Just depends. We'll see how tonight go. How you been doing, sis? It's good to see you. It is good to see you. Can y'all please hit that like button on your way in? It is okay. You are safe in the bushes. You are safe in the chat. There's nothing but love over here. We are going to talk about the Samuel Jordan story. And it's a pretty interesting story, y'all. It's nothing like gruesome or, triggering or nothing like that. It's actually a testimonial story. So I think y'all really would like this story, seriously. You know, him speaking on his testimony. Um, I don't want to tell y'all too much because I don't want to spoil it. But I'm gonna give it a little bit more time for some folks to come in. And y'all know it don't matter to me. I can get about 3, 4 people up in here that's willing to listen and be a part of the story. And we off. We go. We are gone. That's pretty much it. But yeah, I've been really noticing there's been a lot going on up in these YouTube streets, child. Like, I don't want no parts of it at all. I don't want no parts of it. I just be trying to sit up here and protect my peace, seriously, because it's too much. I don't want none of them spirits jumping off through my phone or computer. I don't want no smoke, child. For real. That is facts. It is too much going on already. And it's real on this social media, all this. So I just want to keep it positive and focus on my platform over here and, go from there. Seriously, because it's too much. Absolutely too much. Yeah. Folks out here, trying to control people moves and all kind of stuff. Like, stop it. I just don't understand with all this control and stuff. You cannot tell folks what to do. These folks is grown, super grown, just as well as you are. And be out here telling folks, trying to tell folks what to do. It is something else. Yep. So we probably better get ready. We're getting ready to hit into the 5 minute mark. And I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen. So because I'm not gonna rewind the I'm not gonna go back on the story. Hey my bread. How you doing, baby? Yeah, I don't want to be, rewinding and stuff like that. So, if anybody just want to see like the beginning or whatever, you can always just go back to the beginning of when I started it, and we can go from there. By that time you probably didn't caught up and stuff like that. So, let me see. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me read this disclaimer first. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purpose such as criticism, comment, news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Let me get my screen up here so we can go ahead and get started. Y'all, please hit the like button for me. I really appreciate it. So if y'all want to maybe get a follow-up or something like that, I had came across this story from this content creator.
It was
Hold on,
greater
I didn't stop.
than just
Hold on, y'all.
The blogs and take us back.
up God from coming after you, because you can't put
No,
a
okay, this
purpose
just an
on an identity
introduction.
that's not yours.
Okay, so you guys, if you like, you guys can go follow. This is the content creator. They are called We Need to Talk. So if you like, you are more than welcome to go over there and subscribe. And they have a lot of pretty good stories. You know, I think y'all would like.
Brother, you have come a long way. Your walk is incredible. Could you just introduce people to what they might have seen on the blogs and take us back, seen on the episodes, seen on television, but then take us back to how did this happen? How did this happen? How did God bring you to this place?
Bro, the truth is, I got to start it this way. I was lost. I was deep in sin. I was blind, but now I see. It was amazing grace that saved the wretch like me. So before I even talk about the things that I got into, and
Okay. Also, y'all see the title is this is his story, his testimony on how he went from trans to being a trans and was transformed by Christ.
what happened to me that caused me to be in the state that I was in, people have to understand that I was lost and now I'm found. It was greater than just I was a transgender. I like men. I was lost, but he found me. God delivered me about, I think it's been 12 years. July 15, 2012 was the day that God changed everything. I had an encounter with him that completely changed my life from the inside out. It was an inside work.
Inside job.
It was an inside job. And then it became an outward display. But growing up, I always, from a child, I always felt different. I grew up in church. My family raised me in church. I always actually loved God, believe it or not. I loved him. I sat on the front row and I used to watch the pastor preach, and I used to look at my dad sing in the choir and listen to people sing, and my heart would just be stirred watching this. And I wanted to be that. I just wanted to do that. I wanted to serve God. I knew from a young age the calling had already chose me. I didn't have language for it then, but literally um I used to watch that. But because I was so different um as a young boy, and when I say different, I mean, like, you know, people started telling me something was different about me because I was too feminine, or because the way I walked or carried myself. I dealt with a lot of confusion. There's a young innocent boy that is coming to church, love what he's seeing, feeling something in that, but then in real life at school, you know, trying to hang out on the football field with the guys. They're like, oh, you can't play with us. You need to go play with the girls. The girls that I would play with would be like, yes, you're gay. They would say things like that. And I didn't even know what gay was. I didn't know what, any of that was. I just was being me. But early on, I felt like, because of the things that people said, I felt like something was wrong with me. So, it wasn't but a few years later that I ended up being sexually abused by a man. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I probably was about 7 or 8 years old, and I was at a friend's family's house, and literally, he had pornography on the screen, and we walked in, and I remember feeling the darkness in the room and saying to myself, like, I probably shouldn't be here, because I'd never been exposed to anything like that. It was church boy, I guess you would call it. And my family was, my mom and my dad, they just didn't have stuff like that in the house. So when I saw that on the TV screen, I remember thinking, this is not good and I probably shouldn't be here. But the guy was like, I need you to do what you see her doing. And he basically said, and I'm just practicing, for, when I get married. That's the reason.
That's what the guy said?
That's what the guy told me. He said, the reason why I'm asking you to do this, he said, is, it's just practice, but don't tell anybody. He was like, if you tell somebody, you're going to get in trouble because you shouldn't be doing this. So, there was manipulation there, fear there. And I remember doing it. And I remember, I think it was like performing oral sex at the time. And I remember thinking when we were done, I was like, oh my God, what just happened? And my friends, at the time was also having to do the same thing. And I remember walking home and feeling like, what in the world? Just knowing that something had shifted on the inside of me, something that I couldn't really explain, but it was almost like a piece of my innocence was gone. It was taken from me, and my world began to change. So I guess I probably was acting a little different, after that. And my mom would always ask, like, what's going on with you and stuff like that. But I didn't really know how to tell her. And then I seemed like I kept having these in regular encounters with this person, because every time I would come around them, they would, force me to do these things. And so it became like something that you just did. And as a young person, you can't really escape it, especially, if they're older than you and they're around you. And so you just kind of do it. And then it just began to become a lifestyle that I began to take on and practice and start to enjoy, because sex is enjoyable. I don't care what age you are, at some point you start to enjoy the feeling of it. And then you start attributing, like, maybe this is good this way. And the confusion was already there because of the bullying. The confusion was already there because of, the things that people were saying about me. So the enemy, I feel like, just used all of the rejection.
He watered the seeds.
He used he used that trauma. He used the things that people thought they were doing that was funny to them. He was using that to water the seed. He was using that to hurt me deeper, to confuse me all the more. And it worked. It worked for a long time. I was now, like, confused about who I was. I was a little promiscuous, and then my mom, she found letters that I had wrote to somebody that I was talking to at school. I had to be in middle school at the time. And I remember I was laying on the couch and she dumped all the letters on top of me. Bro, I was so afraid. Because if you ever had a black mama, bro, it's different.
Yeah.
And when she did it, I remember, like, I knew what the letters were. Why did I keep them? silly, but but she opened them up and she laid them all on me, and she was like, "What is this? What is this? Who are you?" She was like, what have you done? What are you doing?" And I was like frazzled. And I remember being like, "I don't know." And nothing, this is nothing. And she was like, "Yes, it is." She was like, are you having sex? Are you gay?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no." And I started to lie because of the anger that was on her face and because of the emotions that I felt in that moment. I did not want her to look at me like that. So I immediately tried to cover it. I immediately tried to say it wasn't what it was, because I did not want to see that look in her eyes. And I know she was only reacting, which most parents do, which is a trap for your kids.
Explain that.
It's a trap for your kids because when you're the person that God entrusted to love them and to love them well, to care for them, to teach them right from wrong, to be a safe place for them as they go through life. When you react out of fear, pain, any of that, what you end up doing is not creating a safe place, but you end up furthering the enemy's agenda, because you end up putting rejection on your child. Because out of your fear and out of your reacting so fast, you end up saying something that you probably shouldn't say. You end up doing something that you probably shouldn't do. And so I don't think it's wise for parents to react when they find out their child is doing that, because you're actually becoming a tool in the enemy's hand. Because in that moment, when a child is found out, or when they come clean, or whatever the case may be, they are looking and needing a safe place. They're looking and needing their mommy. They're needing their dad to listen to them, to love them, and to be slow to speak and walk with them through whatever it is that they need to walk with them through. And I know this because when my mom started to say the things that she said, and she said, "If you're going to live like this, I didn't raise you like that. You know that we serve the Lord." She's saying all the right things, but she said, "You're not my child. You can't live in this house acting like that, living that way." And she immediately began to reject me. And she said, "If this is the life you're gonna live," she was like, "you're gonna have to find another place to stay." Now I'm young, but she was saying this because she was trying to scare me. Because she just didn't want me to be that. She loved me. She just was scared. She was hurting, and she didn't know how to process it yet. And in all of her attempts to deal with it, what it did was it just pushed me further and further, because I knew I couldn't come to her.
Oh,
I knew I couldn't share with her what was going on. I couldn't even process what was going on because I did not want to see the look in her eyes that I saw that day. Um, it's like I didn't even see my mom. I just saw somebody that was angry with me. And I was like, "I don't know how this happened, Mom. I don't know why I'm doing this." I couldn't even say that because I wasn't given a chance to, but I felt that. And that's why if she had taken a moment, if parents take a moment to just try to help you process it, to help you deal with it in a way that I think that parents are supposed to do, then what you do is you create this distance. She didn't ask for that. She probably didn't want that, but her rejecting me and her saying those things to scare me or to make me know this wasn't right, it just made me hide. It made me begin to lie. And that's what happened for the next 2 weeks, man. She would just cook for me. And she would iron my clothes, and she would put the food on the table, but she wouldn't speak to me. She would iron my clothes and hang them up and tell me, this is what you're wearing tomorrow. But that was the extent of our conversation.
Wow. And that
And
wasn't normal.
that wasn't normal. My mom, they told her she couldn't have kids. She tried for years to have a child, years. Her and my dad tried over and over. And miraculously, it was a miracle, really. I was a miracle child. By the time they got married in 75, by the time I came, it was 1990. They had tried, she had cried. All she wanted was a baby. And she had tried everything and it wouldn't work until one day she got a word from the Lord in a prayer moment that she had at her home at the time. And they told her she would have a child and it would be a man child. And lo and behold, it was me. And so I became...
You are the Samuel, Hannah Samuel.
The Hannah Samuel.
Yeah.
Really, I got the story.
Yeah.
And I was her blessing, but I felt like her curse.
Ooh.
Because she used to look at me with eyes of love. She couldn't wait to love on me and to hug me and to ask me how my day was. But when that happened, the rejection was so deep that it took me a few years ago to really recover. And I'm still recovering from it, because you got to understand that I was already dealing with rejection at school. I was dealing with rejection in all of these spaces, from I can't play with these guys because I'm not masculine enough, or I can't be around these girls telling me I'm this. So it was just rejection. And then the moment my mom finds out where I could have gotten love, I got rejection. And I think that was probably the deepest rejection I probably ever faced, because rejection from a parent it's way worse than what anybody else could do to you, because they're entrusted to speak life. They're entrusted to shape who you are, build a child, train a child up in the way that they should go, so that when they're older, they won't depart from it. Not say, you're not who you say you are. You're not my son. Who am I then? My child wouldn't do this. But I am. So now I think something is so wrong with me, because now my mother can't even look at me. So the enemy used that fear to deepen that wound of rejection, which all it did was just push me to want to go find comfort. So as a 16-year-old, as a 13, 14-year-old, I'm now looking for comfort in the place that I was affirmed and wanted. And it was when I was in relations with the guys that I found that. My mom also told me, we will not tell your dad, because if your dad finds out, he's going to kill you and me both. So there was no chance for me to even tell my father. So now there is a root of fear, deeply rooted fear. I got rejection, I got trauma, and now I have a deep root of fear because of what my mom said about my dad. And my dad always loved me. He showed up to everything that I did. He has always been there for me in my life, even up until that moment. But when she said that, I was afraid to even let him see who I was, what I was doing, because I was afraid that he would harm us. And so out of fear, I hid even more.
So you're hiding from your dad. You're in a tension relationship with your mother. This is all middle school, going on to high school. And then how did you how did you begin to seek for comfort, and how did that accelerate you in your life into that lifestyle?
That's a great question. Where you can't find love, acceptance, and security, you will find it. And so I did not find that in my home, so to speak. And it definitely wasn't at church, because if you lived the lifestyle that was homosexual, or you were out there doing any of that, it didn't matter if you was doing anything else.
Yeah.
That's which is a problem. We'll get into that later. But if you live in that life, you're going to hell. You know what I'm saying? Like you're an abomination.
Mhm.
So there was definitely, I was already thinking that the Lord's going to reject me, even at church. So the place where I thought I wanted to be, and I now felt like, oh man, God, I know he hates me. I'm an abomination. I'm messed up. Even though I feel called, there's no way I could do that work because of how they displayed him, how they portrayed him, how they taught him in that space. I grew up in a very Baptist church, and so that kind of explains a little bit of that background. So I found friends who also were like me.
Oh,
There was a community of people who were like me, who also were different, who also liked what I liked, and we discovered it together. And they accepted me. They loved me, and I felt safe around them. And we became some of the best of friends. And we shared things with each other about what we were doing, and our affections and all the things, what I'm saying, with each other. And it was okay there because we were the same. And it was in that place that I used to talk to them on the phone, and we all were considered feminine and girls. So we started acting like girls. We would talk on the phone like girls. And, we had these alter egos. Like one was Beyonce, one was Kelly, one was Michelle. It was just kind of like the nature of like where we went. And we had fun doing it. We would get on chat lines and talk to guys and disguise ourselves. But we created this alter ego that actually matched how we felt. And I think that was also another seed. Because those relationships went on for a while. But my mom found out she had lung cancer when I was 16, and once she found out she had cancer, it wasn't but a short time. I want to say it was probably like a week or so after she was diagnosed with lung cancer that she died. And so I never got a chance to see that smile on her face again. I never got a chance to reconcile or even revisit the things of my past, just because cancer, took her life. And it was a very hard moment for me at 16 years old, because already I'm going through a lot internally. I have nowhere to process all the things. I'm acting out and doing all this stuff. And then my mom, the one person that I love so much because I was the only child, she passes away so quickly. And my dad, who was in the house also, he was having an affair with a lady he had been with for several years while he was with my mom. And because I think he couldn't deal with the pressures and the pain of my mom dying, because my mom did so much and he loved her, and she loved him well, he left to go be with this woman. And I was at the house by myself, trying to process all of this and figure all of this out. So I was left in the house with all of this pain, with all of this confusion.
At 16.
At 16. And I had to continue going to school and continue going through life. But my whole world had turned upside down. How do you go from having a house with both parents? And even though it might have not been perfect because of the relational tension and stuff that I had, that be taken from you. And now, you have to sit and look at all of this. As a 16-year-old, I sat there and just knew my whole life was gone. And in all the pain that I was in that moment,
Jesus.
in that dark house, where I had a good family, to having feel like no family.
Wow.
At least in the house immediately. I had to sit there and the person that pulled up next to me was the enemy.
Pulled up next to you.
He pulled up next to me, and he began to counsel me, because where we won't step in as the church, or we won't step in and help and be there and provide counsel and love and all the things that I needed in the moment, the enemy sat there and said, this is what you do with that.
He volunteered.
Yeah, I got it.
Nobody
I got
else?
this.
Oh, you sure?
I'll take it. And maybe people tried to come around, but actually, as a matter of fact, I remember a pastor who was trusted that came when my mom was actually passed away at that moment. And he came over to the house and he put his arms around me.
Oh, Jesus.
And he began to kiss my forehead. And I felt a sense of peace, because this is a pastor I used to sing at their church.
Yeah.
And as a child in the youth choir, and this pastor kept kissing my forehead, and it went from feeling like I was being consoled and loved to now being touched and attacked. And I remember when his hands started to like caress me and feel me, I remember pushing him and saying, what are you doing? And I said, get out of here. I hate you. And I told him I hated him because I needed to be loved. And that was a safe place for me, because church had always been, for the most part, because I loved it so much growing up as a child, even though I was afraid to show them my scars and be who I was there, I still felt like, it was a place that I can go. So this pastor, who always loved me and always spoke highly of me, always said I was anointed, came and did this to me. And it messed me up. Oh. And I remember he said, please, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I didn't mean it. Don't tell anybody. And he ended up leaving the house. And there's another deep scar and that the enemy I know used. So I'm at the house at this time, and the enemy tells me, just go and do what you've been doing. And so I was leaving the house and I was looking for love in all the wrong places. Thank God I still have my friends and all those things. And I just started partying. I started drinking. I started smoking. I started popping pills, ecstasy, at least like 4 times a week. I would start on like a Thursday and end on a Sunday. Would be high out of my mind, but anything I could do to escape the pain and the feeling that I was feeling. I had to get a job and work and take care of myself in that time, which I was able to manage at a bartending school, and I would work there part-time while I was going to school. But at night and stuff, I was partying. And I went to this house in my partying where I was exposed to these group of people who were basically just like me. It was a community of people who they all lived the lifestyle I was living. It was some girls, it was some men, and it was transgenders also that was there. And that was the first time I was exposed to transgenders, what I knew at that time.
What did it make you feel when you saw them?
It was like, this is something that I didn't know existed. But it looked like an opportunity. I didn't quite know that at the time, but it just looked like, because it's like, well, I always felt like I was feminine. I was always told that I was a girl. I always had this lean in this direction, and I was told to do what you see her do. And I met friends that, and we talk like women and we feel like girls now, and we have these conversations. And then I see this person who is living their life
watering the seed.
And I was like, watering the seed. This is real. And I love that person. And that person became a good friend of mine at the time. And I watched them do life. And they ended up kicking me out of the house because she kept saying, you're not like us. And I was so mad. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I don't know what it is, but it's something about you. She told me, she said, it's just not like us. Wow. And I just don't think you belong here. She said, all we're doing is we're drinking, we're doing drugs, we're having sex, we're doing all these things. She said, but you're just not supposed to be here. She was like, you're not, you think you're a girl, but you're not.
She said that to
She
you?
told me that.
And
This-
wasn't she in their life?
yes, she was a full-fledged transgender and partied with me for many days, called me girl, but one night she looked at me and said, you know what? Something's different about you. Out of everybody that I know that run around this house, you should not be here. And I was like, yes, I mean, yeah, I love this house and this and that. She's like, yeah, but I don't know. And so she said, tell me who you are. So I started bringing her through my life. And I was so high, I fell asleep that night. And after I got done telling her, she told me, well, just go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow. And the next morning is when she came over to me and she said, you don't belong here. I listened to everything you said last night, and it just sounds like that you're just in the wrong place, and you need to go to school like you're supposed to go to school and get out of this house. And she said, if you don't get out, I'm gonna make you get out. And she was definitely forceful, if you knew who she was, and she was that serious about me not residing in that place and taking on that life, because she said, I see you trying to be like us, but it's just not for you. But I was like, yes, it is. You don't understand. So she kicked me out of the house.
God was working early.
Bruh. And I wasn't trying to hear it,
I'm trying to hear it.
because that was the only place, or the one place, where I felt that I was loved. I felt I was normal. I felt that I was secure and accepted. And I didn't want to leave that, you know?
Now I can see why you would want to lean more into that identity, because identity is reinforced in acceptance.
Mm.
I just saw that. And love, or what is perceived as love and acceptance. But go ahead.
So, to that point, I wanted more of that. So I leave, I go to school, go to college. Once I get in this college, I start to feel like, man, I want to change my life so bad. I kept thinking about her and I kept thinking about that. And I was like, you know what? Halloween, I'm going to dress up. And so my friends at the time dressed me up that night. They put makeup on me and hair and all the things. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone that was beautiful. And for the first time, I saw someone that I like to look at. And I was like, man, this is who I'm supposed to be. Everybody was like, oh my God, you are gorgeous. Look at you. And you are so real. And maybe you aren't a guy. Maybe you are supposed to be
What do you
this.
mean you were so real though?
Real in that language meant like you look like a woman.
Oh, you look naturally.
I look
a woman.
naturally like a woman. They were just
Oh.
like, oh, you giving real, you know? And so that was the language. And when you hear that, like, you know that you got it, you know, if they tell you that, because most people, they don't tell that to you, you know? So in that moment, it was just, again, reinforcing that, you know, they were just saying words, but something was happening in my heart. I saw the life that I felt like I had been missing out on, because now it makes sense. Now these things are aligning. And even though that was one night to them, it was, wow, it pushed me into a decision that I sat and I tossed and turned for several days. And I remember thinking about my life and thinking about the different things. And one of my friends who I told you I grew up with, they also had went and changed their life prior to that and had become a transgender. And I remember a trans woman, and I remember looking and, you know, and we had been friends talking about it. I was like, wow, that's so amazing. And so when I did it, I thought, I was like, maybe I'm supposed to transition too. It makes sense. Like, all of this makes sense now. And I did. I went and I threw away all of my clothes, and I I bought new clothes and I bought makeup and I went back downstairs to those girls' house and I said, do it again. And they did it again.
You weren't afraid to choose this, even though you've only known life as a male.
Wasn't afraid at all. I felt like it was my only option because I was so, honestly, I was so angry or I was so deeply hurt and I just didn't really like Samuel.
Mm.
So much so that if it was a way to escape who I was, to finally become the person that maybe I'm supposed to be,
Jeez.
then in the place where I'm accepted, the place where I'm getting this level of validation and all of these things. And I felt good. I finally liked myself. And when I looked in the mirror, I knew that I needed to do it. I had to do it. And there was no turning back. And my friends all were saying the same thing. They were like, you look amazing. This is it. We're willing to help you do it. And they did. And I went so far as to much as change my name. I went down to the courthouse in Tallahassee and I went and I got my name changed from Samuel to Simone because I was going to seal the deal.
Ooh.
And I went back to school and changed my name at the school and went back to classes in that same semester where I should have, as a guy, but I showed up in my new identity, and I lived, man. And
did you want to stun on them when you came
back? I did. I didn't care what they said because I knew a lot of them knew because they was like, wait a minute, what you just here?
How did they? Because that's the general public. These weren't your people.
Oh no,
no,
this was actually the school, like people that were attending campus.
And how did they respond?
Students. It was a lot of mixed responses. Obviously there were some people that were just like what, like this dude, and that kind of thing from the guys, and then they're very uncomfortable with it. And then you had girls who also, were probably like, oh my gosh, but they were a little bit more inviting and a little bit more like, affirming in a sense, like yes, like that's you, whatever. And so it was just like, you dealt with it. But because I was around those people that I was in that house with for so long, they were tough as nails. And so I saw how they dealt with people who tried to treat them like that. So I already knew how to handle people like that. So I didn't let people try me, and I really ignored them because it didn't matter, because it's who I thought I was supposed to be. And so that just started this whole lifestyle at that time of just, I had to figure out how to keep this life up, because at that time it wasn't as accepted, and stuff as it is now, or at least jobs weren't readily available. It was harder to get at the time just because of how they looked at your license. You can have a different picture, but if you got that M on there, they was like, you know what? Yeah. Actually, we already filled this position. It was kind of like that. Yeah. So I saw the people that I was around live the life of escorting and prostitution. And they showed me how to basically like post ads, get money from guys without really having to do a lot of, things with them. But really it was more so just to make money. And they was like, this is what we got to do. So, you got to do this. And if you want to make money, you got to go and put your ads up and get these guys come over and get as much money as you can from them and kick them out, and it was kind of like that. So I learned how to do that. And that's what I started doing. Some people you had to do some things with. And every time I did those things, even though, people would say I probably, enjoyed sex because it was another guy or whatever, honestly, I didn't enjoy it. I was only doing it to make money. I wasn't doing it because I enjoyed it. It was just a way that I had to kind of provide for myself and to, continue to build this life that, I had. And so I began to escort and I began to travel the world, and I made a lot of money. And because I was beautiful, I attracted a lot of people, and I did those things. And it seemed like no matter how much I did those things, though, it felt like there was still something that was missing. No matter how much money I had gotten, and no matter how many friends I had, or even relationships that I had, I still felt like there was just something missing. And so I, at that time, was changing. I was changing, man. what do they call it? I was changing degrees left and right because I was still in school.
Gotcha.
Because I was trying to, find a purpose that I could pursue. And what I know now that I didn't know then was the reason why I was so frustrated is because you can't put a purpose on an identity that's not yours. You can't. You can't. You can try, and we are gifted and wired in such a way that we can make great careers and we can become successful. But we were all born and created with a specific purpose that's assigned to our identity in the package in which we came here as. And so there was frustration in my life because I was trying to be a nurse and I was trying to do these things that fit the woman that I was becoming.
Well, bro, you can't just gloss over that, because that is the argument talking about assigning at birth. But if God assigns the gender congruently or simultaneously with purpose, then you could do a reassignment of gender, but there's no reassignment of
purpose. There's no reassignment of purpose, which is why I think partially why that there is a lot of suicide.
Oh my God.
There is a lot of still confusion even after. You're seeing people detransition even now because they're discovering that I'm just still feeling like there's something incomplete. There's something still missing. I look beautiful. I feel like everything aligns. All that was true, but there's still something that's missing. And for me, I felt many times like I wanted to commit suicide because it just wasn't lining up. It just wasn't working out. And I didn't like making money the way that I was making money, because that's not inherently who I am. I don't want to rob people. I don't want to take money from people. I didn't want to sleep with people to try to get hundreds of dollars or whatever it was. I didn't. That's not what I wanted to do. And so all of that was beginning to do something so deep in me that made me feel like I didn't even want to be here. And I remember crying one time on my room floor, and one of my friends, at the time was my college roommate, was amazing. I remember he came over and he saw me go through the whole transition. I remember he said to me, he was like, if you're not happy, he's like, why don't you just, go back to the way you was, or, change it. And I got mad and I was like, don't tell me that. You don't understand. This is who I'm supposed to be. And I really felt like that. I want to make that very clear. I really felt like I had found who I was supposed to be. I just needed to try to find the purpose and the thing in which I could do that would make it all make sense. And I just couldn't find that. So there was this emptiness that I had, even though I had abundance, or what seemed like abundance on the outside. And with all the other things, there was still emptiness on the inside that only I knew. And that's the deception. People think because of what they see on the outward of a person that they are good and they are happy and they are satisfied. But I guarantee you, if you look deep enough, if you take time to ask the right questions, there's something that is missing if they don't know who they are and whose they are. It's just not possible for you to know that. It's not possible for you to feel okay, because nothing is going to satisfy. And so I kept working, kept going. And I remember one night, it's a very significant moment. I was working in Jacksonville. And while I was there, somebody came in the room to pay me for services. And when they came in, they put the money down on the table. And I remember at that time, I was like, okay, what is it that you want to do? And he looked at me and he said, I don't want to do anything. I just wanted to pay for your time. And I was like, well, this is a waste of time. You got more money because you messing up my money. You just want to sit in here and talk. I'm like, so what's up? And he's like, I just want to ask you a question. And I was like, what do you want? He said, how long are you going to go down this path to try to create this person that you've created? I was like, excuse me? Like, what are you talking about? This is who I am. I'm feeling disrespected. And he wasn't taken back by it. He knew, and he said, no, I'm serious. He said, I'm saying this because I care. And I want to ask the question. I just want to know, like, how long are you going to, try to keep becoming this person, that you're becoming? And I was like, this is who I am. So I don't know what you're saying, sir. Like, you need to leave my room. I said, because I know who I am. He was like, well, no, you weren't born a woman. I know. He said, you were actually born a man. And he was going through the whole thing. I was like, all right, you're getting very disrespectful. He said, no, I'm not trying to. But he began to tell me, he was like, I know you've created this person. And I'm just saying, like, God still has a plan for you. And I was like, oh, man, like, I don't want to hear this. And I'm like, first of all, I felt like I was at the darkest place of my journey. And when I say dark, I just mean the depth of where I was in that point. I was so far gone and living in that life that honestly, I wasn't thinking about a call. I wasn't trying to think about the call. Actually, it was so far from me. I was living, right? I was living. And then this guy comes in and he's like, yeah, how long you going to keep becoming that? Because God still wants you. And so that was the first time I was kind of slapped in the face with it. And I remember looking at him and I was like, dude, first of all, this is who I am. I'm not going back to who I was. And I began to kind of like convince him that this is who I am, is who I'm supposed to be. And I was doing all the argument. And I remember he said in this conversation, he was like, so what's next for you? I was like, well, I'm getting ready to go get breast implants. I'd already scheduled it. I was getting ready to travel to go get the implants because I had made a decision that I wanted to get these implants because it was who I was going to be. And I wanted to complete everything. And I remember that I told him that, and he said to me, he was like, so you're about to get ready to go and get implants? And I said, yeah. I was like, because once I get those, I was like, God will leave me alone. I was like, so this whole purpose thing you're talking about, I was like, man, he's not going to want me anyway. What do you got to say to that? Like, I'll be an abomination. He will leave me alone. And this is who I'm going to be. And so this is what I'm going through with. And he laughed and he said, you're going to spend a lot of money, waste a lot of time, and use a lot of resources. He said, for you to still realize that that's still not going to stop God from coming after you. He loves you.
No.
And he is still going to come after you. No matter how much you change yourself, it will not stop him. And it's like the room, something happened in the room, but I remember being like, I don't want to hear this. And I remember I made him leave and I kicked him out. And I tossed and turned, but I was like, nah, this ain't happening. Like, this is who I am. Jesus. And I'm going to go all the way through with it. There were many moments along after that people would say to me randomly, it would be every so many months, they'd be like, God, there's just something special about you. There's something different about you. I don't care where I would be walking in the mall, fully who I was, and they would still stop me.
They could discern it.
Discern it.
Natural discernment.
Bro, I would be in a group of people getting ready to go shop, and it would be me that somebody would say, you're so beautiful. God loves you. And it was always God. It was always God. It was not just a compliment, but it was always a God that was saying these things to me, and I did not really want to hear it because that's not who I was anymore. And I was trying to block it out, but it's like he continually kept trying to send signs to remind me that he still wanted me no matter where I was in life, no matter what I had done to myself. He kept showing up. He would show up in the mall. He'd show up in the grocery store. He'd show up in my room. He'd show up in a group of friends. He'd show up at the club. And it would just be this pull that he still had love for me, but I was still blocking that out. And so I went and got the implants. I wish I can say that that was enough, but it didn't, because I was who I was supposed to be in my mind. And so I went to Mexico. I got the implants.
Wait, weren't you afraid? Like they say that overseas, when you go and do that stuff, is kind of dangerous. Were you just that committed to?
Oh, absolutely. That was who I was. And so there was nothing, there was no fear that would stop me, from making that change. The only fear that I had was the fear of getting the full surgery done, not just the implants, but also going through the castration. Yeah, where basically
whole.
Oh yeah. Basically what they do in castration, for the most part, as far as I know, because I didn't go through it, but they would basically remove the testicles and stuff, so you will stop producing testosterone, whatnot.
Oh, wow.
And so I wanted to have both surgeries done at once so I could produce more hormones. I was on hormone therapy. I was doing it all. I was taking the hormone pills, and I was getting off the market, all those things. And I was becoming more feminine, but I wanted to make sure I sped up the process. And if that was going to help me, I was like, bet.
Yeah.
But when I went to go do the surgery, the doctor actually said, I can't do both of them at the same time. He said, I would, but I can't. He said, because it is very life-changing. And he said, and I know you want to pay for it, and I know you can pay for it. He said,
he rejected the money.
He rejected the money. And I was like, but I want to get this done. And he said, no, how about this? How about you get the implants first? He said, and after you've healed and all of that, he was like, if you still feel like you want to have the other surgery, just come back. He said, but it's a big change at one time. And he was like, and I just don't feel comfortable with doing both at once. Now I'm going to Mexico and I'm paying, good money for this. But he told me that. And it was in that moment that I realized, like, okay, well, I'm not going to get that. I'm going to forego that. And that I was a little nervous about, because I knew that meant like, oh yeah, it's changed. But I had no other choice, because the doctor wouldn't do it. So I went and got the implants, came back, and it felt like money went up.
You mean your price went up?
Price went up. Yeah, because now I'm like, I already looked real and I was beautiful, as they say, but now I have the implants. Now I have the whole package. And so I was really starting to make money and travel and do all the things. But even in all of that, again, I still felt like something was missing. I had all the friends, I had the relationships, I had all the things, and I just felt like something was missing. So I cried out to God one night. I began to pray, and I said, Lord, I was like, I don't know what to do. I've tried to, change my degrees, and I want to do this, I want to do that. And I said, but I just want to try to find, what I'm supposed to be doing.
Jesus.
And the Lord only said 2 words: go home.
Oh.
And so he told me to go home. And I was like, no, I'm not going home. And I remember, because I wasn't listening to his instruction, I just kept going in the way that I was going. And, just to put a pin in that, one thing I tell people is that when you ask God to help you, to heal you, to free you, to direct you, he's committed to that, because he wants you to be in alignment with his will for your life. So when I started asking God to help me figure out what I'm supposed to do, he spoke. And God always speaks to us when we ask him that question, but a lot of times we don't like what he's saying to us. We reject the instruction, and the healing, the deliverance, the purpose, the alignment is on the other side of the instruction. I did not know that. I didn't want to do that. It didn't matter because I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going home, wasn't going back in a sense, So I kept going. And I would run into these walls where I just felt the same feeling again, happy on the outside and things were going well. It wasn't that I was out here depressed. Like things were going well and I was having fun. Like I was living, living a dream in a sense.
Yeah.
Feeling good, had good relationships and had what I wanted at the snap of my fingers.
Jesus.
But what was happening on the inside kept bothering me. And so again, I asked the question, God, I don't know what to do, and a couple months later, I'm talking to him again. And he says the same thing, go home. Because you can't go past the last place you tell God no.
Hey, do I have something to throw? I need something to throw. You can't what?
You can't go past the last place you tell God no. We always want a new set of instructions, or we want him to do something new, or we want him to say something else. And I don't care if it's been a few days, a few months, a few years. You may look like you're moving, but you may not really be going nowhere. Not in the direction in which he will have for you, because he has an instruction, a specific instruction for our lives that he's committed to. He's like, you got to say yes to this in order for me to do that. And because he loves us, he doesn't change the last thing he said, because he knows the way that I take. He knows what's best for me. So I hear him say, go home. I finally say, okay, I'm going to go home. I get enough money to go home. And when I go home, I went to stay with my godmom, but I had my own instructions. I was like, listen, I want to stay with you, and I'm only going to be here for a short period of time. I'm going to move to Atlanta. That's what I said at the time. I was like, and I thought I was going to go and become like a porn star and get out of the business of like escorting. I never prostituted like on the streets, but I made a lot of money and like ads and stuff. But I said, I want to get out of that dangerous work, in a sense, and kind of be a little bit more professional, I guess. And so I knew that was the next plan. So I started to, say, okay, I'll go home, but on my terms. Well, in the process of doing that, the pastor, who I call a spiritual mom now, who I love so much at this church, at the time was called Fresh Wind Ministries in Fort Myers. God woke her up in the middle of the night, or that morning, and said that there was going to be a supernatural miracle or healing that was going to take place in service. And she felt it all morning long. And so she texted all her leaders and she said, invite somebody to go to church with you today, to come to church, because God is going to do something supernatural. And my godmom at the time was one of the leaders.
Oh my.
And they didn't have church until 5:00 in the afternoon. So, she told me, she was like, hey, you got to go to church with me. And I was like, I don't want to go to church. Like, I'm not going to go to church. I had been to churches when I was in Tallahassee, but they were churches that were, very much kind of like affirming, or at least they didn't really preach the gospel. They didn't really preach, those things. It was pretty much like encouraging and whatnot. So I was going a lot, but this was a different type of church. And I kind of knew what I was going into, but I also was like, I don't really want to, go there. So I told her, I was like, no. She was like, well, if you're going to be in this house, you got to go to church, and you just come to church. And I was like, all right, I'll go. And so I went to church that afternoon, and I remember I got myself together. I was going in there just as I was. I mean, at that point, I had no other choice who I was. I had long hair, and my 6-inch heels, and I went. I was like, going to church. Okay, I'm going as I am, so y'all gonna have to accept me. I kind of had a feeling that I was probably going to be judged and stuff because I was from Fort Myers. So I kind of felt like people know me, whatever. And as soon as I get there, there's literally this guy standing at the door who was married to a good sister of mine.
Okay.
And I knew he hated transgenders.
Oh,
I knew he hated homosexuals. I mean hate, but he was an usher. But he was very clear. Many times I came home that I was not invited to the house and all those things. But my beautiful sister, she didn't care what he said. She still let me come around, and she was so instrumental in that time. But I saw him at the door. And I remember when I walked in, I walked past him and I was like, here we go. And I walked past him. And he said, hey, come here. And I was like, me? He was like, yeah. And I was like, what is this about? And so I walk over, I'm like, here we go. And he's like, I want you to know I love you. And he said, and I'm sorry if I made you feel otherwise. And he said, but don't ever walk past me when you come into these doors and not love on me. And he said, come here. And he hugged me. And when he hugged me, I felt like he disarmed me. Wow. Because the love that I felt in that moment, I didn't expect to feel. And it was very much real. And it was in that love connection that I felt like the walls that I had up of even going in there actually came down.
God, the reason.
Okay, y'all, I'm about to get ready and pull up part 2. It's also a part 3 to this, y'all, but it hasn't been aired yet. So let's get to part 2. Part 3 is already scheduled, so it just hasn't been aired yet. So I hope y'all enjoy. I really do.
Package. I was really starting to make money and travel, and the Lord only said 2 words: go home. I thought I was gonna go and become like a pop star, but she was like, hey, you got to go to church with me. And I had long hair, 6-inch heels. And I'm going as I am, so y'all gonna have to accept me. He will use anything. I needed that usher that day, and I was weeping. It was like something in me was breaking. In the midst of all that I had done to myself, how could you still love a person like me? He never asked me to restore myself. My yes was the only thing that was required. I didn't even want to put the high heel shoes back on, and I walked out with them in my hand. When she cut my hair, I was afraid in that moment because I didn't know who I was going to look like. And I got up and I went to the mirror, and for the first time, I saw Samuel.
Okay. That is so dope.
I didn't know that's what I needed, but God did. He was so intentional, making sure that he was already working. And he will use the usher. He will use the greeter.
Come on.
He will use the parking committee. Don't ever underestimate your job. Don't ever underestimate your service. But if God is in the business of healing someone, delivering someone, he will use anything. Don't ever underestimate it. I needed that usher that day. And I didn't just need an usher. I needed an usher who was full of love. I walked in and I sat on the third row, and I remember the worship was just so powerful, the praise and everything. And I remember I lifted my hands and I'm literally sitting there and I'm worshiping. And I feel like I could, and I'm just worshiping, but every song I felt that was playing, it just was communicating something to my heart about the grace of God, the mercy of God, the love of God. And these songs were just speaking to the depths of my soul. And I didn't go in there looking for anything. So I thought I just was being obedient to go to church. And the worship leader, because the worship set got so powerful, he literally took his hands off the keyboard and everybody began to sing in the spirit. They began to just sing and flow in the spirit of God. And I remember as this flow was happening, I was crying and I was weeping. And I mean, it was like something in me was breaking. And I didn't even know what they were singing. And that's why I love the song of the Lord, and I love when the Holy Spirit's moving. And I mean, now, because they were singing in the spirit. And even though I didn't know what they were singing or what they were saying, something was breaking on the inside of me. And the worship leader heard a song, and he sang the song, "This is the air I breathe. I'm desperate for you. I'm lost without you." And when he began to sing the words, "I'm desperate for you, I'm lost without you," for the first time, I had heard my cry. I had heard what it was that was going on deep down inside. And it was the fact that I was desperate for him and I was lost without him.
The song narrated your heart.
The song narrated my heart. And I feel like the little boy in me heard his song because something broke on the inside of me. And I just remember screaming out from a very desperate place, just crying out in desperation. And I was like, God, I need you. If you really love me, if you really have a plan for me, then I need you to come and I need you to rescue me. I knew he had to. It was the cry that said, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. If this is real, I need you. And I cried. And I remember they said the cry was so, it was so special, it was so unique, that the pastor had been pacing back and forth trying to listen for what the Lord wanted to do that day. And when she heard me cry and scream out, she knew that the whole service was for me. She knew what the nudging was all about that morning. And so she came down, and I remember she looked at me and she gave me some words, and she basically, began to tell me that this whole service is for you. And I just cried and I cried, and she said other things. But more importantly, the Lord said to me, he said, if you say yes with everything, he said, I will forgive you for everything and I will restore your life. And I cried because I kept thinking to myself, how could you still want me? Jesus. I've changed my name. I've changed my body. I have completely, I'm a prostitute, escort, whatever you want to call it. I felt so worthless. I felt so low inside because of the things that I had been doing. How could you still want me? And it messes me up because I felt like he wasn't intimidated by my darkness.
What?
He wasn't intimidated by how deep, how far I was away from who he had created.
That's funny that you said created and he wasn't intimidated by your darkness, because it took me immediately to Genesis 1:1. When the Spirit moved upon the face of the deep, the Spirit wasn't intimidated by the deep. And then he said, "Let there be light," in the midst of darkness, instantaneously, without hesitation.
Wow.
So the darkness comprehended it not, could not encapsulate, could not subdue, meaning the light of God is just that, is that dominant. You said he wasn't intimidated. That's about to destroy me.
He wasn't intimidated by what I had done or how far I was or how bad I thought I was. He wasn't intimidated by how much I had changed myself or how many times I had given myself away. He was not moved by what choices I made about who I was going to be. He didn't even care that I had changed my body. God just wanted me to realize that I needed him. And he said these words to me, or at least I felt like this is what he was saying to me in that moment, that not only are you desperate for me, but I'm desperate for you too. He had been trying to pursue me all of my life, through all of the rejection, through all of the trauma, through all of the loss, through all of the confusion, through all of the hurt. He was showing up. God never missed a game. He was there.
Jesus.
He never missed a season. He was there. I didn't recognize how near he was in the moments, but God was there. And in this moment, what wrecked me the most is that he would be there in the midst of all that I had done to myself. How could you still love a person like me? How could you redeem somebody like me? How could you do that? But his love is greater than any sin we could ever commit. His love is greater than anything we could ever change, anything we could ever do to ourselves. He's saying, son, daughter, I don't care about that. My love is here to set you free. For God so loved the world that he gave his son. God loved me. That's why he came after me. God loves his sons and his daughters. And I feel like God is saying, he's like, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry they didn't affirm you the way you needed. I'm sorry you didn't get the validation that you should have gotten. I'm sorry that you had these feelings about yourself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you were confused. I'm sorry that people didn't step in. I'm sorry about all of that stuff. I'm sorry that they abused you. I'm sorry that they didn't love you. I'm sorry your mom rejected you when all you needed was love. I'm sorry that that happened to you. I didn't want that to happen to you, but people are people and they are in this fallen world and they do stuff to us. And he's like, but if you would just receive my love for you,
Yeah,
that's been after you, that's been chasing you down all of your life. It is in my love that I will make everything right. It's in my love
it's in my love.
that I will save your life, that I will redeem what you think is unredeemable, that I will restore what you think can never be restored. God never asked me, he never asked me to restore myself. He never asked me to restore myself. My yes was the only thing that was required in this moment. And it's the only thing he requires anytime a person has done running from him. He said, if you say yes with everything, he said, I will forgive you for everything, and I will restore your life. God was committed to my freedom. God was committed to my restoration process. God was committed. He said, I'm going to take it on. All I need you to do, though, is give me a yes. I'm like, but I got these implants. I got my name. He didn't care. He said, you give me your list and I'll show you my love. Give me your list and I'll show you my love. I will restore it. And a lot of people won't move into relationship with God or be willing to change or be willing to say yes to the Lord because they're so afraid of what it will mean, of what they have to do. But I didn't have to do anything but just give him a yes. Now that yes came with more instruction, but not in that moment. God wrecked me with his love so deeply that even though I didn't know how he was going to do what he was going to do, if he could come and love me in spite of me, love me in spite of what happened to me, love me enough to come in this unlovable place that Christians had wrote me off and said he's too far gone. He's changed his name in his life, and you just might as well, forget about it. If he could love me that much, surely I can trust him. It wasn't until I knew the love of God in that moment that I knew I could trust him. And so I trusted him enough to say yes, but love came before trust. And once I said yes, literally I said yes. Yes. And I didn't know what that yes meant at the time. But as I said yes, I literally felt things break off of me. All of the guilt and the shame and just the years of bondage, I felt like it just broke. And I ran around that room and I said yes. I said, I'm free. I'm free. I'm free. And I literally felt chains breaking. And I fell down at the feet of God right in the middle of that church. And I just began to cry and I began to repent and say, Lord, I'm so sorry for what I've done. And I'm so sorry for who I've become. And I'm just sorry, but I'm here now. And I say yes. And when I got up off the floor, bro, I looked in the compact mirror and I slammed it shut because the person that I saw in that mirror, I didn't even recognize them anymore. I literally, there was something that happened on the inside that I did not recognize that person, so much so that I didn't even want to put the high heel shoes back on. I put them in my hand and the pastor had dismissed after they prayed over me. And I walked out with them in my hand and I almost felt like exposed in a sense because I was like, something's different. Something's different.
Jesus. Man.
And I got home and I didn't know what to do. And I tossed and turned and the enemy said, you can't change. You got these implants, your name, you got all these friends, you're in a relationship with somebody. I was in a committed relationship with somebody. And I tossed and turned and I heard the Lord say to me, because it was just like back and forth. And I heard the Lord say in a very still, small voice, change what you can change and what you can, I will. And that set my heart at peace. And the next moment I got up and I said, cut my hair. I woke up that next morning and my godmom cut my hair. And when she cut my hair, I was afraid in that moment because I didn't know who I was going to look like. I didn't know who I was going to be. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I had been on hormones. hormones and all these things and hadn't seen myself in years. And she spelled death in the floor with the braids. And I remember after she did it, she said, "You're going to use this probably for your book one day that you might write if you write one." She said, "But it's done." And she had tears in her eyes. And she said, "You are so handsome." And I was like, "I am?" And she said, "Yeah, go look in the mirror." And I was like, "Oh my God." And I just had tears streaming down my face. And I got up and I went to the mirror. And for the first time, when I turned that corner and I walked in that bathroom, I saw Samuel. I saw myself free. For the first time, I felt at peace in my life. It wasn't like I even saw the person that was there before.
Come
I
on.
didn't even recognize who I was. I was a beautiful human being that was so loved. And I just looked myself in the mirror and say, "Wow, it's you." Oh God. Because I had lost me, bro. I was done with me. I was so broken. And for the first time, I felt like I was loved. For the first time, I had accepted who I was. And I was so happy that God he didn't throw me away. I was so happy that even though other people had cut me off and I might have been estranged from certain groups, not with him. He had shifted my life and he had changed my life, and he was there with me. And I still had the implants. And I looked at them and I thought, man, I got to get rid of these. And the Lord, I just felt his peace. Like, don't worry about that.
Oh, Jesus.
And I put on my, I'm crying. I put on my clothes. I didn't have any clothes, but I put on the clothes that was there. And I said, I got to get rid of all that stuff. I can't wear any of that. And my godmom's son, he came later that day and he said, "Bro, I just want to let you know, like, man, I'm so happy at what's happened in your life." He was like, "If you can wear my size, you can wear anything in this closet." And so immediately I was like, okay, let me see. And I put on the shirt and I literally fit it. I fit the shirt. I put on the pants and they fit. God already had a wardrobe for me. He had a new wardrobe for me, and I didn't have to do anything but obey his instructions. He told me to throw away the clothes. And when I did, he provided everything that I gave up for God. He replaced it with something better. He replaced it with what I needed for who I was and who I was becoming. There were friends that I had to say, man, even though we're friends, I tried to drag them on as long as I could. And it was one friend that was really hard. And I still love and miss them to this day, but we had been through everything together. And the Lord told me that all of our conversations would always surround, just the past, even after my deliverance. And the Lord told me this friendship can't go where you're going in this next season. And I didn't understand that. And but I knew I heard the voice of God because he was instructing me every step of the way. See, we don't have to instruct people in their deliverance. When God is healing somebody, when God is delivering them, he will instruct them. The Holy Spirit counseled me, told me what to do because he knew exactly what I needed to do to become who I needed to become. Yes, we need people and people should step in and help, but the Holy Spirit was active in my life. He was committed to helping me become who he called me to be. And so that does mean hard things. And a lot of times we don't tell people that it is going to, some things you're going to have to do to possess, what God has for you. It may be difficult, but the glory that's on the other side of what you have to let go, what you have to get rid of, is far greater than anything you can hold on to. And I have been seeing glimpses of that. So even though this friendship meant so much to me, it wasn't good for me and where I was going. And so I had to have the hard conversation, and he gave me the strength to do it. Because wherever God gives you instruction, if we decide to do it, there's a grace to go along with it. He gave me the strength. I said, no way I could tell my friend this, but I said I will. And it was something that was unlocked, that I was able to carry out the instruction of the Lord. And it was a hard conversation. And I cried, and we cried and grieved. And my friend told me, I can't believe that now you're in God. This is the moment that you're going to walk away. It don't even make sense. We've been through everything together. Now that you're actually with God, he's going to have you walk away from me and like leave me. And I was like, I don't understand, but I just know that we just can't. Like, everything we talk about is the past. And that friend was like, got mad. It was like, you know what? Bet. And we stopped talking, and I wept for a long time after that, because you will have to grieve some hard things that you have to let go. You're not going to always just let it go because you want to. There's a lot of things on this journey. It's called suffering.
Oh.
It's called picking up your cross and bearing it. It's heavy. It's weighty. And that's a part of following Jesus. And I learned that early on, but every time I made a decision for him, he replaced it with something else. And he brought me friends. He brought me brothers. He brought me sisters that became what I needed in that season, that spoke life into me, that helped me to be able to walk out. And that friend came back a while later and sent me a message and said, I just want you to know I'm so proud of you, because I understand now why you had to do what you did. Because if I had stayed in your life, you wouldn't have been able to become the man that you're becoming right now. I'm so proud of you. Please pray for me. And that was beautiful, because God didn't have to do that. That's like an amenity.
Come on.
Right? Like he didn't have to. I didn't need that. But God just wanted to show me. And he wanted to communicate something to them as well. But I wouldn't have known that, and they wouldn't have seen that, and I wouldn't have experienced that had I not said yes to the Lord. We always see the fruit of God on the other side of our obedience. The fruit is always on the other side of our obedience. May not make sense in the moment.
Come on.
But it will make sense later when you see what God is up to, what he's doing. And I wanted to be who he wanted me to be so bad that I was willing to give up everything. Nothing I had done worked. So I gave up my social media. I threw away my phone. I literally had to. I woke up. I didn't have to. I wanted to get up every morning and sit with God and just tell him how much I love him. And I would read the Bible, and I would go through the pages of scripture, and it's like the words would just speak to me. I understood now that the old has passed and now the new has come. And, all these things just begin to make sense. And when I showed up to church, they were so happy. It's like literally that next Sunday, everybody, just the whole worship team lost it, because they saw me the week prior come in as Simone. But when I came back as Samuel. And they were like seeing a real life miracle before their eyes. And the pastor had me get up in front of the church, and she said, "Y'all remember that person that was here last week?" She was like, "This was them." She's like, "But they're not here anymore. My son is here,
Yeah.
and his name is Samuel."
Ooh. Yeah.
It was a Holy Ghost filled day. It was a Holy Ghost party because people had saw a real life miracle before their eyes. What only God can do.
Brother, you came all the way that way. You gave up everything. You threw away all the old clothes, but still, your name was still legally Simone. Still, you had these implants. You just trust in God that He's going to do, but that could be in 10 years, 20 years.
I know. And I'm not gonna lie, there was moments that I was like, man, is this ever gonna happen? Like, but every time I'll fix myself to try to like figure out, or I get worked up, I've always felt the Lord said, "Don't worry about it. I got it." And one day the Lord instructed me to go down and change my name. And I went to the judge to go and change my name. And I remember having this, sharing what happened to me. I got the opportunity to share why I wanted to change my name back. And I remember the judge said, "We're waiving the fees. You can have your name back. That is your name." And he hit that gavel. And that was beautiful because the judge was like, "You can have your name back. And because of that story, we're waiving all the fees. You don't even have to pay for it."
Okay. You said God was committed to His word and seeing it through in your life. And so every step of the way was evidence of God's commitment to it. You know, this doesn't make sense, right? According to rationale.
Nah.
From the wardrobe to now the judge waiving the fees. This is a legal system.
But wait.
There's more?
There's more. There was still another piece to this thing, man. I still had these implants, and I was working at a youth shelter ministering to kids. And that was one of my favorite jobs because I was able to understand them and their different walks of life as their parents would drop them off and they would talk about the rejection and stuff, or I would be able to at least see what they were going through. So I was able to, God was able to use me to love them well. In that season that I was there, but I had to tie my chest down every day, wear this bright red shirt. And, I couldn't just, and that was the only way to kind of just continue to be. And I remember I finally asked the Lord, like, "God, what do you want me to do next?" And I asked the right question. He was like, "I want you to go to school. And I want you to, go to school for ministry." And I was like, okay, it's time to pursue my calling on a higher way. And so I went to go and apply for school. And I had a random conversation with my aunt, and she brought up Southeastern. And I was like, oh my God, that's where I'm supposed to go. And God literally used her to speak to me, and I knew where I was supposed to go. And all of a sudden I got this phone call from somebody that I used to work for at a place that I work for in Fort Myers, that I talked about earlier. And they were like, "I want to meet with you. We're so excited about what's happening in your life. Before you go to school, we need to meet with you." It was a sense of urgency. And I remember saying, "Okay, I'll meet with you." And I went and met with them. And basically right then and right there, as we were talking, they were just sharing with me how they were just so impacted by the miracle of God in my life and how they saw God in my life all of these years, even before I transitioned, after I transitioned. And they just know that God is really in my life because of what they were able to see. And they said, and we just were trying to figure out what we should do. And the mom of the company said, and something came to me, "I'm going to give you $4,000 to have your surgery removed." She said, "I got the money." And I thought to myself, that's what I can do. And I have to do it before he goes to school. And I sat there and I kind of looked a little dumbfounded because I'm like, "You about to give me what?" And I wasn't expecting that. And the Lord spoke to me in that moment, and he said, "I told you change what you can change, and what you can't, I will do." So
Dude.
There was this peace that I knew that it came over me, and I was like, wow, God, you took care of it too. He was so committed to make sure that I was becoming who he had called me to be. He was so committed, man, that he kept showing up in his timing, yes after yes, alignment after alignment, and he paid for it all. So what I spent all my money on, the name change in the past, the implants, all of that, clothes, God literally restored everything. He even used a lady that was a friend of the family to take me shopping, and she bought my first wardrobe. She said, I just feel compelled to help you. And I love her so much. And I never forget, went in that store. She said, get what you want. And I got pieces that I wanted instead of wearing somebody else's stuff. God took care of it all. So I was able to get the implants removed. And I went to school that semester actually with the implants, and I had to schedule it because she told me there was going to be no payment plan. We're paying for it in full. And she did. She paid for it, and I went and got them done after my first semester. And I had to still suffer because I still had to go to my dorm the first semester with those implants with 4 of the guys living in there and wait till they leave to they knew my story because I shared with them. They were so impacted by it, but still out of privacy, like I had to do all these things, but God had worked it out. And the power of God moved in my relationships throughout school because people knew that I had walked through such a powerful, change in the Lord. They knew they could feel and sense the fruit of God on my life and the love of God through my life, that I was just seeing God show up in just random conversations. I would see him show up at the lunchroom. I would see him show up in the dorm. We'd have prayer throughout the campus all the time, and God would just move. And I just knew that he was calling me for so much more. It was evident. It was evident, man.
This to me, bro, just the details that you have shared, because there's so much more, man. It's such a relief to me because I think, man, you're so right, man. When God is asking you for a yes, well, our hesitancy is about the burden that comes with it, everything that we're going to have to do, everything that we have to fix, everything we have to kind of make right. But you said it so good. You said it's just give me that yes. On the other side of the yes is my provision, is evidence of how committed I am to sing my word through. Bro, that's deliverance for me. So we don't have to be afraid to say yes.
We don't have to be afraid. He has our best intentions at heart. He has had it from the beginning. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. He came into this world while we were yet sinners. He died for us.
Jesus.
He's been committed from the beginning. He was committed before we got here.
Come on.
What? He was committed before we got here.
Come on.
How much more after you have given him your life would he not be committed to seeing it all the way through? The Bible says that he's faithful to complete.
Come on.
That which he started. What? Until the day that Jesus comes, he's steadfast in that thing. He ain't going nowhere. He's like, I'm committed to your freedom. I'm committed to you becoming like my son. I'm not just committed from you breaking out, coming from gay to straight, because that's what we think.
I want to right there.
Yeah.
Because in most situations, when people see your story, you said it in the beginning, we want deliverance without love. I want to speak to the fact that it wasn't just God dealing with you in that moment and you being free of some of those desires and some of the affinities or whatever the case may be. You believe that there was more that God wanted to do in your life and more healing in the space that he wanted to do on the inner man. Could you get into that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I knew when he came for me that day in that church that I was lost. And I knew that I needed him. And I wasn't coming to him to change my sexual orientation. That wasn't the only reason that I was crying out for him. I knew that I needed a savior because I was lost. And when I gave him my life, it was in that moment that as I began to start to understand why he made man, and I began to read the scriptures and understand how he created a thing, is when he started to have the conversation with me about all of these other areas of my life. And like I said earlier, I could trust him to know what was best for me because he was the only one that can save me, is what I found out first. And then I started to understand because he created me. So of course he knows more than me.
That's good.
And so the creature should always trust the creator, right? You know what I'm saying? We should always trust him. And so God began to layer by layer start dealing with the areas of my life and how I was living and how I should live. And I started to cast off things or give up things because it's what he asked of me, because it's what he wanted. What I realized though early on was that even though I was delivered, I still needed healing. I didn't realize that even though the devil had been casted out in a sense, or just I had found freedom, I didn't realize that I was still hurting until things started happening where I would feel rejected. Or if I disappointed somebody, how it would make me feel. And that in and of itself was like, why do I feel these feelings? Why do I want to go and mess up? You know, why do I feel like I want to go back and sin? Why I feel like I want to go and sleep around again? And it was in that I realized that, oh, there's more work that needs to be done. God needed to heal the place in me that started me going down the path that I was going down anyway. He needed to heal the wound of rejection that even gave access to the enemy in the first place. God never, if we deal with the fruit of a thing, we'll never get to the root of a thing. And if we never get to the root of a thing, then we can keep dealing with fruit, but it's just going to keep popping up and it might be a different type of fruit, but it's just going to keep popping up. And a lot of times we focus on fruit, but we're not equipped enough to help people understand the root. He needed to deal with the root of trauma in my life from the sexual abuse, that because trauma affects your identity. He needed to deal with the rejection in my life, because it was the rejection that made me feel like I wasn't valuable or worthy and was looking for things that I was looking for. He needed to deal with those areas in my life so that I can really be free. And it took things happening on the journey.
Yeah.
Me feeling like I disappointed people, and then feeling this feeling in my heart that I was like, oh my God, I want to go mess up. And then I would go mess up, and and next thing you know, it was in that one day I stopped, and the Lord was like, let's talk about this thing. He was like, the next time you feel like you want to go and fall, whether that's drinking, where you want to fall and go watch porn or whatever it is. He said, I want you to ask me why. And I remember I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask you why. And so the next time that I felt that, literally I said, all right, I want to go do it. What's going on? Why? He said, I'm glad you asked. And the Lord literally said to me, he said, what happened today? And I was like, well, I went to work and, you know, I had an issue with my boss. And he said, he said, what did it make you feel in that moment with your boss? And I said, I feel like I disappointed them. And it messed up my day. And he was like, you felt like you disappointed your boss. He said, and you think your boss is your mother. Because when you disappointed your mother, she rejected you. She treated you a certain way, and you thought when you made the mistake on your job that because your boss responded in a certain way, it made you feel like your mother made you feel, and you immediately wanted to retreat. He said, that's what you've been doing all of this time. He said, I need to deal with that. Your boss is not your mother. And the younger version of you is trying to tell you how to deal with it. Because that 12-year-old, that 13-year-old is saying, this is that feeling.
Wow. You're being mentored by
the unhealed version of you where it started. And it is possible that you can be saved and walking with the Lord, but still have your growth stunted at a certain age. Because what we don't deal with will show up in our lives. And however we dealt with it in that season of our lives, until we find healing, until we get truth and we appropriate truth to that area, until we do that, we're going to continue to do what we did before. We might change idols, but we're gonna go somewhere to try to cope and deal with the feeling that we feel because we don't want to feel it.
That's it.
We don't want to feel it. And we need to tell that version of ourselves, I actually don't need you at this part of my life. I now have Jesus. And he can tell me what to do with this part of my life. He's committed to me. So we can let that young person go so that we can hear what the Lord has to say about that area of our life that we have not given to him yet. I trusted the thing that I ran to help me deal with the feeling of my rejection. I trusted the thing that the enemy, the option he gave me, the suggestion he made. I trusted that thing to give me the feeling, the healing that I needed, the solace just to make me feel better. I trusted that thing. And that's why we can't be free. It's because an idol can't heal us.
Bro, blows my mind. So a system, a pattern was created from the gate. The Lord set you free, freed your soul, but the system, the patterns were still there that needed to be broken. And it reminds me of when Satan was trying to tempt Jesus with hunger. Hey, turn this stone into bread and go ahead and indulge in it because you're hungry. I know you just finished fasting. And Jesus rejected him, gave him the word of God. But what was really insightful was that the enemy suggested for him to indulge in something, but in a perverted way, because stones weren't meant to be used to convert it and to be eaten and digested only bread was. And if it was to be transferred, if there was supposed to be a miracle or transformation, it would not come at the suggestion of the enemy. And so the enemy tricks us into abusing, or in other words, abusing just means wrong use. Perversion just means out of order. And so the enemy would love for us to digest in things. They might be good things, right? They might be things that might be harmless. But he was like, if you can allow music to tell you how to feel, if you can take these feelings and appropriate them this way, if sex, I know, is designed by God, but if you could indulge in it this way, see, it just got to be abused or used wrongly or used out of order. And I'll teach you that you can eat it and trick your mind into thinking that you're satisfied, but you'll realize that you'll be back. I call it hot Cheetos. When we were hungry as kids, we're like, let me go to the store and get some hot Cheetos. But hot Cheetos never did what mashed potatoes and steak did. But for some reason, for the immature mind, when I'm hungry, I've been programmed to go for hot Cheetos. A system has been built. No matter, even though after all these 22, 40, 50 years of living, hot Cheetos have not once in a day satisfied. But I tricked my mind into believing that hot Cheetos does something for me. And so what Jesus is coming to do is them hot Cheetos out your hand.
That's right.
It never satisfies you, and it never will. You indulge in that at some wrongful suggestion. And so God is saying, I'm going to give you what satisfies. And so instead, Jesus flipped it back with the word and says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. So literally, your yes, your obedience to God, well, give me your why. You begin to go to him for the source of satisfaction.
Yeah.
That changes everything to me, bro.
It changes everything. God literally had to reconstruct my belief systems. I've been trained by this for so many years. I was in a cycle over and over and over and over. This is how I dealt with the thing, even though it wasn't satisfying. I built a belief system that said that this at least made me feel better, even though I know it wasn't satisfying me. I knew that, but it made me feel better. And so it lied to me, and I believed the lie. Oh, okay, there's that. I believed the lie in a belief system, which I think people call strongholds, was set up in my life that the enemy started way from a young child. And God was like, if you really want to taste and see real freedom, or that free indeed life that I promised you, you got to let me appropriate the truth to that belief system that you have.
Listen to me. This right here, what you just said, what you just declared right now, is generationally prophetic. And if you're listening, I'm sorry, I don't interrupt things. This, if you don't get nothing, I want you to just say that one more time, because if you heard nothing, get that in your soul. What did you just?
God, we have to let the truth of the word of the Lord infiltrate our belief systems, these wrong belief systems, these lies that we've believed, these strongholds that have been built over years and years, that is proving to you does not work. It's proving to you that you got to keep running back and bowing down, and you got to keep giving yourself over to it. It's proving it to you over and over. It's proved it to me over and over. But at some point, I needed to hear what God had to say about my rejection. I needed to not run from the rejection. I needed to not run from the feeling of it, but I needed to bring the feeling to him. That's a practical way you can start dealing with these wrong belief systems. You have to bring the feeling. What are you feeling right now? I'm feeling like they're rejecting me. I'm just using that one. And it's like, okay, I feel like I disappointed. And then the Lord can then speak to you and say, actually, you're not rejected. You're just thinking of this as you thought of it when you were a child. He can actually then speak truth to you, and he can say, actually, you're fully accepted in the beloved. I love you.
What?
I'm not mad with you. He can begin to start using the scripture to then speak to the area in our life. I'm convinced that we just need to stop in and of itself reading scripture alone just to be reading it. But we need to develop, especially when you're on a journey to healing, which healing is a journey, right? We need to really begin to sit with Holy Spirit and start asking him, what areas in my life do I need truth? What areas in my life have I developed a faulty belief system? And then allow him to reveal that what you need to read, because then he will lead you to the scriptures that tell you the truth about that thing. And then it's that truth that will make you free. Because you can read it over and over, but you need to actively put something with it. And so when I feel like I am rejected and I feel like all of those things, and I come to him and I tell him that, and he starts saying, okay, well, read this. And I begin to read it, it begins to speak to, it begins to infiltrate that faulty belief system. And then it begins to make me free. It has to be replaced. You will never get free unless you replace the lie with the truth. We need truth, not a truth, not culture's truth. I need to find out what the Lord has to say about me, about this area in my life. And that is where true freedom begins. That is where I can stand up in a place that I used to run, because I can say, you know what, that don't move me no more. Actually, no, I'm not rejected. I'm loved. I'm fully accepted. Now I can stand and I can actually say, oh, that was easy. So wait a minute, let me get this right. It's gonna mess you up when you start doing this, because you're gonna be, I've been bowing to this thing all of this time when this was available to me. Come on. It changes everything, man.
All right, you guys, we have came to the end of part 2. I hope everybody has got a word, a blessing, and have gotten something from this testimony from Mr. Samuel Jordan. I know I did, y'all. I had some moments where I was getting teary-eyed. So I hope you all enjoyed tonight's live stream. And the third part, it has not aired yet, but I believe it comes out sometime this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So once it comes out, then we will definitely tune in for that one, for the last part 3. And y'all please share the live. Like, I seriously, people can use this word, and really learn something from it. I wanted to do something really soothing and be able to bless somebody today, and just to be able to bring the word, because it's just really been a lot going on. And y'all know I do cover the true crime and stuff like that. But to be able to hear testimonies like this, like, we will always be doing testimony stories over here. It's not going to always be about tragic things that's going on in the world. It's going to also be, testimony stories that we're going to have a experience with, and hopefully be able to take something from it, and take it along with us along our journey in our lives, to be able to keep us strengthened, knowing that we are not the only ones that went through some things. We also can get through those things as well. So yes, most definitely, I enjoyed y'all as well. I love y'all so much. And I thank everybody for keeping it cute over here. I thank Terry and the guys that came, the Cuddies. Those are the Cuddies, y'all. You know, we got the cuties and the Cuddies over here. So I really just wanted to bless y'all with this, you know, and I hope it's been a blessing to everybody who came in, hit the like button, um, shared the live and everything. God bless you all, and I love y'all, and I will see you all soon. Have a blessed one.